a Sapphire Running Zone podcast.
Hi everyone, this is Tim from the Sapphire Running Zone, and today we are doing things a little bit different. We are looking at the world of ultra marathon running. Now, it's interesting because a lot of the podcasts I've done lately with people, there seems to be a real interest in going further. Once they've done a marathon, they want to go a little bit further, but there's obviously not always as much info as we would like on how you go about doing that. Today, we're going to sort all that out. We're going to chat to Glen in one of these Runner Stories podcasts. And Glen is going to tell us all about his transition into ultra running. And it's absolutely fascinating. What is an ultra? Well, an ultra is technically anything past a marathon, but obviously they can differ hugely. But first up, let me welcome Glen. Tell us how you got into running in the first place, Glen.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tim, and thanks for inviting me onto the podcast. I've been running for about 49 years. I actually started running when I was 10 years old to actually get fitter for football, of all things. So I used to run kind of 3 miles, 3 times a week, just to help as part of my general football fitness. Was a centre half and wanted to get into centre midfield. So my coach said, "Glen, you need to get a little bit fitter." So that's what I decided to do. First official race was Landud No 10 over in North Wales, a 10-mile run. Did that with my dad, my brother and my cousin. My first marathon was the Piccadilly Bolton Marathon back in 1985 when I was 19. So I actually did that run for a charity called Aphasic. Now, they were a charity that looked after people with speech, language and communication difficulties. So it was a charity that one of my work colleagues was very passionate about. So I agreed to do that run for that particular charity, which was excellent. Spent the next few years doing the odd marathon, mainly focused actually on half marathons. Stepping down, the marathons were quite tough at the time. Spent 6 months training for my first marathon and didn't have a drink for 6 months as well, which for people who know me would say that was quite difficult, especially at that early age. Probably stopped running for a good 10 or 15 years in terms of races, but very much kind of kept running socially, again, just to keep fit for football. But once I gave up football due to various injuries, I desperately wanted to do something, look for a next challenge, and actually found triathlon, swim, bike, run. Obviously, running still an interest there, and I loved swimming. And certainly the long distance triathlon events, the iron distance event, includes a marathon at the end as well. So for me to do something whereby I could do 3 separate sports, but also keep that passion for running was absolutely brilliant. So did a number of standalone marathons as part of my long distance training. I completed various ultra marathon events. At age 50, I got bored of triathlon and thought, what can I do next? And started doing some research, and this thing called ultra marathon. Don't really understand what an ultra marathon is. So, Googled it, found out that it's anything, as you said, above that 26.2. I thought, what, this could be my next challenge. So, why not give it a go? I'm always looking for a challenge. I'm always looking for something different, and came across a race that GB Ultras did, and it was the Chester 50 ultra marathon. So, I trained really hard for that and completed that age 51. And ever since then, that's what I've tended to focus in on. So I've now done around 15 ultras, including a couple of 100-milers this year as well. So, very passionate about running. I'm not the quickest runner by any stretch of the imagination. I'm always, we call it the fun bus at the back. So, in ultras, it's all around getting there ahead of cut-off, getting there ahead of the finish time. Yes, of course, people will be in there to break records and to beat personal best. There's lots of people in the ultramarathon community are doing it for, health and well-being reasons as well. And it is all around finishing. And that's something that I'm very passionate about as well, is making sure that we can help people to enter the right ultramarathon, make sure we get as many people finishing as possible.
I can't comprehend the difference between doing marathon training and then being able to extend the training so significantly. How did you make that first step? Was it a case of, well, my long run of 18 miles that I was doing for a marathon is actually nowhere near good enough? Or did you just gradually add another mile onto your long run, so you were up at 30 miles or 32 miles? I mean, how did you approach that first one?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and for me, there are many differences between a marathon and an ultra marathon. Distance is the obvious one. The terrain is another concept as well that you need to consider. Marathons generally kind of road. You see some trail marathons, whereas the vast majority of ultras are very much on that trails and a mountain scenario. Pacing is an interesting one as well. Pacing for an ultramarathon, totally different than you get with a marathon. It's all around getting to that end point at some point rather than trying to get there as quickly as possible, as perhaps we do in a marathon. Nutrition is another difference in terms of, for a marathon, you normally get away with kind of gels and water, whereas an ultra, you actually need real food. You need that on a regular basis. The checkpoints are often a lot further apart as well. So lots of differences around the kind of the different aspects to an ultra marathon. Mentally, it's a lot tougher to complete an ultra marathon given the time that you're actually out there on the course. So when you're training, you're trying to build your training program to accommodate all those kind of differences. So I got a background of knee issues, ankle issues with football. So I personally did not increase my training by a huge amount of extra mileage. Essentially, if you can complete a marathon, you have the capability to complete an ultra marathon. As I said, I'm not a fast runner. I've done that. There's numerous friends, numbers of runners that I know that have come from exactly the same background as me. So did I increase the mileage? Yes, as part of perhaps core training, tend to average about 50 mile a week. That would include, and this is probably the big change between a marathon and an ultra marathon, it's back-to-back runs. So getting used to tired legs. So I would do maybe a 25-mile run on the Saturday and then do a 10-mile run on the Sunday. It's about time on legs. It's getting used to running on tired muscles. By all means, yes, as part of your training program, you will be doing what you'd normally do for a marathon anyway. You do some steady runs, you do some tempo runs, you do some high interval kind of training runs. I think it's probably a little bit of a myth in terms of, how much training do you have to do to take you that additional step up? I for one, found it quite easy, I'll be honest, in terms of I tend to be mentally strong. That makes up for sometimes my lack of fitness in certain areas. But absolutely, the longest run I did before Chester 50-mile event was a 30-mile recce. And the recommendation was, again, do your training, get your core fitness up there, but make sure you arrive at the race fresh. So if you can do, 26 mile, if you do 30 mile, if you've been doing back-to-back runs, you will be able to do that, whatever it takes to get across that finish line.
Right, and presumably that approach differs also, given that when we talk about an ultra, it can be anything from 50 miles, anything from 26.3 miles, 250 miles, can't it? So your approach is fundamentally different in those. So what's the furthest that you've done?
So the furthest I've done is 100 mile.
Right, and your approach, was it totally different to the 50 miler, or was it pretty much the same sort of approach, just with a longer long run process?
Exactly the same kind of approach. I probably spent a lot more time planning. You have to plan if you're doing a 100-mile event. It's going to throw up some different challenges, and you need to be aware of what those are. Plan your pacing strategy, your nutrition strategy, even logistics in terms of getting out of bed, getting breakfast, getting to location, etc., etc. So absolutely more planning involved. But in terms of the actual kind of running, yes, probably up the miles, but not significantly up the miles. It's all around kind of quality and time on feet are the key things for me. I would not recommend people do a 100 miler before they've done a 50, because it is a lot tougher challenge to do 100. So I think a 50 is part of that kind of step up. Before you do that, certainly from a GB Ultras company perspective, we insist that people have to have done a 50 miler as part of the entry level for the 100-mile event.
Would you focus on a more urban
Well,
race,
yeah.
or would you be happy to go up in the hills for your first one?
So again, my own personal view is I would recommend, if you haven't got that mountain experience and you haven't used a map and compass, then absolutely, try for your first one, because your first one, you want to succeed. You want to get that great feeling. You want to think, oh my God, this is fantastic. I love this. I want to do more of these. So you need to finish. So I think, take as much risk out of the race as you can. And therefore, absolutely, try a more straightforward one that you don't need to navigate yourself. There's lots of other things. When I was choosing Chester 50 as my first one, what did I look at? One that was the distance. So I wanted to do an ultra marathon. We've just said I could have done a 30-mile, but I think when I looked at it, everyone was saying, well, actually, 50-mile, that's a good one to do. But essentially, just choose a race that matches your current capabilities. I was confident, coming from a triathlon background where I ended with a marathon, that actually I could probably add another marathon on top of that, if you're not going to force me to do a 7-hour bike ride and a kind of a 1.5-hour swim. Terrain and elevation we've talked about, absolutely. So, choose a course where the terrain is similar to what you train on. If you're living on an element of flatness, then don't go and try and do a race in Snowdonia or the Brecon Beacons or Scotland, for example. It's very much horses for courses. The level of support you get, for me, this was a key one. I want to enter a race whereby I feel I'm fully supported. So if something goes wrong, or to give me the maximum chances of finishing, I want a fully supported race. So I want lots of checkpoints. I want them, properly stocked with food that's going to keep me going. I want friendly, knowledgeable and checkpoint staff. I want to know we've got medical cover so in case something happens. And certainly for family and friends, a tracker, on your person just enables a family to track. They know where you are. Just as important, it knows the race directors know where you are. So if there is an issue, it can be found, fairly comfortable and quickly. Cut-off times is something that, again, for me, very important from an ultra. There are cut-offs at every single checkpoint, as well as the final cut-off. So, try and find yourself an event whereby, the cut-offs look generous and within your capability. Manchester to Liverpool is one of DB Ultra's races, and that had a 96% completion rate this year. 96%. So I'd be thinking, you know what? I might have a go at that. If they can do that, I can do that. So, cut-offs is important. Location was something I looked at, a local race. You know where it is, you know how to get there. Again, it takes some of the stress out of an ultra. And I think the final thing for me is kind of personal meaning. Does this race mean something to me? It's going to be tough. So I want to be training for something that I kind of, wanted to kind of breathe and live. And Chester was an area I knew well. It's my local kind of, it's where the nearest hills are, effectively the nearest 50-miler to home. So, being kind of personally invested in a race as well. So all those things, something for runners to consider when they're thinking about, stepping up from marathon to ultras.
I'm interested to know how many times have you fundraised when you've been doing an ultra? But you touched on the fact that you fundraised for your first marathon. Have you done fundraising for an ultra, and how did you find it? I presume people were sort of in awe of the distances you were doing.
Yeah, so I fundraised for 2 races in the last 3 years. One was a race. So I retired from full-time banking 3 years ago. So I decided I would run to all the branches that I've worked at. It was a 66-mile run, which was the furthest run I'd done at the time. So very much to kind of celebrate my retirement, I decided to raise money for 3 cancer charities. That was quite easy to raise funds for, actually, because I work for a large bank and worked for a number of large banks as well. So the amount of people that were prepared to kind of sponsor me, because it was purely based on sponsorship, in terms of volume, was lots of people. And in certain cases, because I had a fairly senior position in the bank, some of those people were fairly senior and therefore have a bigger pocket. That was fairly straightforward, managed to raise just over £3,000, so £1,000 each for the cancer charities, which was great. Cheshire Ring 100 was a different approach, because For the first time, I started talking to Young Lives versus Cancer. So they're a cancer charity that look after children and young adults under the age of 25, deal with anything that cancer throws at them. You know, they look after family, friends, etc. So I spoke to those guys to tell them what I was doing. I also spoke to Wayne Drinkwater, the owner and event director at GB Ultras, and we agreed we would do a kind of a partnership with Young Lives versus Cancer. So what that effectively meant was we wanted to work together to raise the profile of Young Lives versus Cancer in terms of a kind of a charity, as well known as Cancer Research UK, Macmillan, and Christie's, for example, just to name three. Don't get me wrong, fantastic charity. But Young Lives doesn't really
And a name change as well, because it was Click Sergeant, wasn't it?
absolutely wasn't. Clearly, that name has helped, but that, you know, in terms of profile, they still wanted something to raise their profile. So we had some signage at the start and the end. The Cheshire Ring Ultra, the actual finish line and start line is in Media City, UK, in Manchester. So high profile, iconic location. We got them to start the race to do the countdown. We had a team of 13 runners, including myself, all running in Young Lives versus Cancer colours. They had their own checkpoint, so they got their own volunteers in to run on the checkpoint with guidance from one or two of our more senior checkpoint leads that GB Ultras would provide. I was running the race for charity as well. So, you know, fundraising in the normal manner. And yeah, there's no doubt about it. There's normally a few things that come into play. One, how often did you last try raising funds, Glenn? What's the charity? Does it mean something to me? You know, and does it mean something to the people who are prepared to sponsor? Yeah, the distance helps. The distance helps. Sometimes the location of the race as well. If people can relate to kind of location, they know the location. Equally, is it something that happens all the time, or is this a new challenge for Glenn? Is this going to be kind of difficult than he's maybe done in the past as well? So all these things kind of kick into play. Absolutely, in terms of generating interest, then, you know, through social media, the general posts around, you know, what it is I'm doing, why I'm doing that. I like to use facts and figures from the charity as well that helps explain. So, you know, Young Lives, you know, some people can't even afford to visit their child in hospital on a regular basis. Well, the charity provides kind of travel funds to do that, and just providing facts that really kind of, you know, bring it home. You know, how many young children are diagnosed with cancer each week. I think by kind of, you know, bringing some pointy kind of facts home, it kind of touches on the heartstring in a nice way. Because obviously, I'm looking to raise funds. So they're the kind of things that I did, and there's lots of kind of pictures of the event with all the team wearing Young Lives versus Cancer t-shirts. So, you know, the team get to use those as well in future marketing for Young Lives versus Cancer as well. So lots of ways that we worked together to they were interested in the profile and what it would do for them. So great thing, and something that I think we'll do going forward as well. Because not just was it good for the charity, I think runners were actually saying it was just great to see a kind of a theme checkpoint, to see some different faces, to understand, you know, what some people are going through, and they were giving up their time to come and help them do a race as well. So yeah, really interesting working together. And that was the first time we've done that. But touch wood, not the last time that we'll do that.
Before we head off, Glenn, could you just give us some of your top tips for anyone taking on their first ultra?
Make sure you plan stuff. Make sure you plan your training, plan your logistics, plan your nutrition, plan your pacing. Make sure you've got some form of contingency arrangements in case something goes wrong. Get yourself a GPX watch. You know, they'll help you to navigate. They will track your pace. That's so important. Don't overtrain. Arrive on race day kind of fresh and ready to go. Set a reminder on your watch. You can actually set a reminder to actually drink and eat, just in case you kind of lose track of time.
Do you have a sort of the taper? Is it the same as it would be on a marathon? Is it like a 3-week taper you would generally operate on?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly a week before, I do not do any running whatsoever. In terms of probably a 2-week taper for me, and then nothing whatsoever in that final week. Learn and practice power hiking. So important. You need to be moving forward all times. Don't spend too long in the checkpoints. Yes, you need to do, but get in, get out. Run your own race at your own pace. So don't go trying to run someone else's kind of race. Remember the why. Why did you enter that event? When it gets tough, it's good to remember that. Cheshire Ring, I'm remembering I'm doing this for Young Lives versus Cancer. That's why I'm doing the event. That's the motivation. Get a mantra that we talked about. Don't try new gear on race day. Don't be scared of using poles. They're not cheat sticks. In ultras, they're allowed. Any ultras, and you need them. They're good for the mountains, up, down. They're great for pacing, even on a flat ultra.
What percentage of people are using those?
It varies from race to race. It absolutely does. But for example, on a flat ultra, Cheshire Ring, I reckon there was about 25% of people were using poles towards the end of the race to help.
Wow.
Absolutely, it helps with the pacing. And the final thing for me is just don't think about the whole distance. Think about going from checkpoint to checkpoint. As I mentioned, anyone can get 6 mile, 10 mile. Sometimes you can get a little bit overwhelmed by the distance. Don't be. Just go checkpoint to checkpoint and you finish your first ultra.
That's really useful. There must be an unbelievable sense of achievement at the finish. And I can imagine it becomes a bit addictive and you want to move through the distances. So when are we going to see you traversing Scotland?
I'm not too sure. I think you'll probably see me driving around Scotland with some drop bags rather than actually running that event. Let's just leave that thought with me.
Absolutely. Brilliant. I really appreciate that. And hopefully we can have a conversation with you a bit further down the line.
Yeah, love to, Tim. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for listening to this Sapphire Running Zone podcast. Keep checking back as we have lots more podcasts coming soon.